click live. It says,
Okay.
it says we're
I'll
live.
start sharing out.
Hold on. It says
It takes
we're
a second.
live. It says we're live. So now I go to Twitter.
Yeah, we're live.
Now, do you know this is my 31st time doing it?
Wow, crazy.
Oh, look at that. Look at me. I'm like a blur. So now I retweet it.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. And we are live. This is so exciting.
Yes, indeed.
And now I'm going to turn down my music. Oh, hold on. Now, actually, I've got it. The only way I can turn down my music is by going to here. I forgot I changed my thing. So now I click this to turn down my music. Then I go back here, and then I go to my phone control. That's it. We did it. We're live.
Okay.
Isn't that exciting? And we've been wanting to have a chat for some time, right?
Yeah, no, we've been talking about this for months, honestly. I think, it's been one of those things where I've been lagging and lazy in terms of I'm a terrible correspondent generally. So.
Yeah. And I'm not. Right? That makes it pretty funny.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, man. So, but now we did it. We're here. And I'm so excited about this. And it's even better because we get to argue.
Yeah, it's true. We do.
We really do, man. And our argument actually began like 10 minutes ago, right? When we were setting up the microphone.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't know that there's like a resolution or a core thing, but, I have a certain general position as to all this stuff, right? A position on the Georgia Senate race, a position on the likelihood of Trump remaining in office and winning on all this litigation. And so I don't know, maybe some of that you agree, maybe on some points you don't disagree with me, but on others you do. I don't know exactly.
I can't wait to argue with you about it because it's such a fun, it's not only a fun type of thing, but these are actually kind of very important conversations to have, right? Isn't that interesting? Because even there hasn't been a lot of vigorous debate within the GOP. There's rather just been a lot of pronouncements from both sides. And now the GOP is in a civil war. I'm a Democrat. I get to watch you guys like do that type of thing. But I think it's an important conversation, right?
Sure.
No matter what, I think it's an important conversation. So, and I'm glad you guys are in a civil war because I think that's going to lead to hopefully a productive outcome for everybody. Because I've got my own things going. Okay, with that said, right? It's Dante. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Will Chamberlain. I am the publisher of Human Events, and I'm senior counsel to both the Article 3 project and the Internet Accountability Project. Much of my advocacy is focused on Twitter. It's centered around, I've been pretty active in terms of both pushing for President Trump and his administration, pushing for Republicans to be much more aggressive in terms of regulating big tech, and also in terms of getting judges appointed. That's the Article 3 project. We were working to get Amy Coney Barrett confirmed, and I'm a big believer in the importance of getting Republicans on the bench. But that's, I think most of it's interesting because I'm kind of coming into this sort of normal establishment world through Twitter, which is different than I think a lot of people have done, right? They usually come up in the establishment and then try and build a Twitter account, but I've done it a little differently. I have, one of the things that I've been doing, I mean, I do Periscopes myself on my forum, as probably many of you know, and I've been very aggressive about doing legal analysis. One of the big themes that I had worked on over the past year was Michael Flynn's criminal case and the abuses that the DOJ was doing to him. So, I feel like I've been, pretty aggressively on the side of Trump and MAGA, but I've made some people angry in the past few weeks because I do not think that Trump is going to be president in 2 months. I think he's going to ultimately Biden will take office, even though I don't like that outcome.
Yeah. So thank you for that introduction. And we're not ready for the debate yet because now I'm going to lay down my groundwork. And it's interesting because, we were talking about it right before we went live that my mentor co-founded CNN with Ted Turner, and he actually created this Reese Schonfeld, who's left us, and created Crossfire, which was with Pat Buchanan, right? Right. And so I forget who was on the other side, maybe Lou Dobbs or something. I don't remember who was on the other side of Crossfire against him, but whoever it is, I'm one of those guys on Crossfire. I'm either the guy sitting on the left or the guy sitting on the right, and you're the other guy. Right. So, this is exciting. And I made some predictions, I guess, March, April, May, June. I actually started predicting in 2018 what was going to be the outcome. I have tweets that say, look, Trump, it's all going to be kind of rigged. It's in 2018, I said he could just declassify everything, right? That was it in 2018. And my expectation was by hook or by crook, Biden was going to win.
I guess I wasn't that sanguine. I was a little more optimistic, although I didn't think, I didn't put a bet down. Like, so one of my basic theses of the world is that bets are attacks on bullshit. And if you make predictions and you have the ability to bet on them, you probably should. Like, I think that's actually pretty ethical, because it means that you actually have skin in the game when you're going to make a projection about the future. And I actually didn't bet on this election because I felt the line was about right. The line was on Predicted was about like 65-35 in favor of Biden, which at my assessment, I thought that was about the right odds to be looking at this election, like that Trump had a solid, solid chance of winning, even in the face of very bad polling. But that, given how heavy it was, that Biden had to be favored. And so I guess I wasn't as surprised that Trump lost as maybe, or that, okay, like before we get into like whether or not Trump in fact lost, but like that, whether I wasn't as surprised that ultimately, the election results came down the way they did, and that Biden has been called as the president-elect. I'm not as surprised by that. But at the same time, like, I wanted Trump to win very badly. I think it's absurd to give Democrats control of the executive branch and think that's a good thing. And there were people in my, the actual rhinos who were saying things like, "Oh, this is actually a really good outcome for Republicans, because we'll get rid of Trump and then we'll keep the Senate." I'm like, no. Trump was great, and it's terrible to lose the executive branch. But I'm also a pragmatist. Like, we do need to hold on to the Senate. I think catastrophe could result from complete unified Democrat control of the government, and I feel like we're not doing enough to avoid that.
Okay, so you could be right. I don't know. We're gonna figure it out. But I will say that I expected Trump to win in 2016. I was traveling to the country, so all the excitement for him, and plus I saw, what he was, an expression of a wage earner revolt that was going on. It's going to get a lot worse. It's going to get a lot worse. And I expected him to win in 2016, and I expected whoever it was to be losing in 2020. Right? And I can live with all this, and I'm going to present my side of it in just a moment. So please, everybody, have patience with me, right?
Sure.
Because I think I'm on your side, and I'm going to I'm your opposition. You know that.
Okay.
Right? We discussed that before.
You're supposed, that's the problem. Like, sometimes you have a debate, and then you realize you don't really disagree on things. So that's a possibility.
No. I'm your opposition. I promise you. I'm against you.
Okay.
In the good way.
By all means, disagree away.
So I expected there to be a lot of cheating, right? I thought the megacorps are taking over. Everybody knows I've discussed this a lot. Fastest roll-up of power in history. I've been keeping a log, and I expected there to be a lot of cheating because I know how popular Trump genuinely is. Everybody loves entrepreneurism, but it didn't make a difference because, they let Hillary walk. I think once they let Hillary walk and they saw the how they did it, all the devices and kind of this concentration of media, that they got very confident, and they say, "Listen, that's it. We're done. We've got the eternal get out of jail free card." And they just, it's very interesting what they've done. And now's not time to discuss, and now's the time to argue. I expected, the elites have been spending the last 4 years kind of in aggressive pursuit, right, of Trump and demoralizing his voters. So I expected there to be a tremendous amount of cheating. So I think Stop the Steal is not just about Trump. I think, and Ali and I discussed it a little bit last night, actually, I think it's about all those mothers in Chicago who are losing their children. I think it's about the mothers in Baltimore because they were deplatformed, right? They were deplatformed for the last 15 or 20 years. So I think that this is actually their fight also. Well,
I mean, I guess, this is where maybe we don't disagree. I've never said people should stop fighting the election. Like, there's a distinction that I make. I mean, and I think this is the core of where people have gotten my position completely wrong, between a descriptive position and a normative position, right? Normatively, I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, we need to concede because the Democrats want us to, and they're so nice to us all the time. Like, no, I don't care. Litigate to the end of the earth against them. I don't care. Like, make their lives miserable. We should be my view is we should be not only litigating to the ends of the earth with them in terms of election fraud and just litigating every instance down. We should also be using the lame duck period to make their lives miserable in the incoming administration. 3 or 4 new special and counsel investigations. I mean, we saw the new Durham one, right? Durham became a special counsel, but we should have another one to look into Biden and his China dealings, another one to look into potential election fraud. I don't care, right? Like, just use what power we have available to us to screw them. But descriptively, I'm also a pragmatist. I don't think that the election challenges will work. And I'm a lawyer. I can read briefs. I can evaluate.
May I just ask?
Sure.
So is your objection to stop the steal that it won't work?
No, I mean, honestly, this is the thing. I don't really have an objection in the abstract to stop the steal. The only objection I have is when people start talking about not voting in the Republican Senate races.
Okay.
In the abstract.
So what would be the most ideal outcome right now?
The most ideal outcome? I mean, the most ideal outcome is Trump returns to office. We magically prove voter fraud.
So let's work our way down, right? Because that's the top of your list. So is that Trump is retained office? Yeah,
that's the ideal outcome.
Okay.
I just think the odds of that outcome are infinitesimally small.
And you said you're pragmatic, right?
Yeah. Right.
So you realize, of course, that justice, society decides what justice is at the end of the day, right? I mean, that's a 2,000-year-old argument that we don't really need to debate because that's been done for the last 2,000 years, right?
Sure.
So justice is society decides what justice is, and justice is a lever of the elites, right? It's always been a lever of the elites,
right?
And that's kind of been a social compact with the people. So, do you feel that Trump? Do you feel that the support of Stop the Steal is helpful for Trump for showing kind of a national support?
Sure. I mean, again, like the idea of like wanting to fight the election fraud as far as it goes, as hard as you can. I have zero problem with that. I think that's perfectly just and righteous. Okay. Like, my objections to Stop the Steal normatively have been limited to the essential recklessness they have shown with like going after Kelly Loeffler and Senator Perdue, right? That's my objection. Like, when you say things like,
may we please just continue with our ideal. So your ideal is that Trump stays in office.
Right. Yeah, sure. That's my ideal. Obviously. Like, I've been a Trump supporter the whole time. So yes, that is still my ideal. Yeah.
I realize that. So for Trump to stay in office requires some type of popular movement. Right, so it's not just a legal outcome that is required. It's also kind of a popular movement that's required.
Sure, I mean, you have to do both at the same time. But like, I also there are limits. Also, there are constraints to this argument, right? Like, I saw like Mike Flynn and certain people calling for martial law so that Trump can enact a revote. I don't support that at all. Right.
I understand, but we're not talking about what you're not talking about, right? We're talking about what you are talking about. Right? And I just want to get an understanding of it so we can kind of pursue it. So the ideal is that Trump stays in office.
Yes.
And we've already agreed, right, that justice, society decides what justice is, right? And
that's sort of abstract. Like, if you try and make it concrete, I may stop agreeing with how you think. We may think about that in two different ways. So like,
sure.
Right.
And we'll keep the philosophical part out of it because I think that's been argued for several thousand years.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's also been argued that the elites, the justice is a lever of the elites, right? It's a device of the elites, right? They can take power away and they can grant power, right?
Sure.
But it's a device of the elite. We can argue that philosophically, but we're going to get lost in it. But you've read Plato's Republic, you've read Marx, you've read all the same things that I have. Do you have any disagreements with those arguments?
I mean, not abstractly, right? Like, so no. I mean, again, it's just going to depend on how like you make them concrete. Because I feel like you're essentially you're building a logical chain of argument Like if
I'm just trying to accomplish your ideal, and I'm just trying to understand, because we need to have some agreement on the words and the terms we're using.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want Trump to win. I want the Republican Party to control and have as much power in the federal government as possible.
Okay.
I think that the Democrat Party represents a basic implicit threat to the livelihoods and also the basic social fabric of our country, whether it be abortion or especially, I think the Second Amendment is the best example of this, right? I think a unified Democrat controlled government means the end of the Second Amendment in any meaningful way. DC versus Heller was a closely fought decision. With that decision is the one that expressly says the Second Amendment creates an individual right to bear arms, not just a collective right. And so that's your ability to own a firearm and concealed carry. Democrats want to get rid of that. If they had the Senate, they've already talked about wanting to pack the court. They pack the court. Next time a gun case comes up, Heller is reversed, and all of a sudden you don't have an individual right to own a firearm.
I understand. I mean, you've given me a lot of examples, right? Extensions of your ideal. But we still have to deal with the number one thing on your list, which is that Trump stays in office. And that requires a lot of combat, legal combat. And that also requires popular support.
Sure. Right? Yes, I agree. Okay. I don't oppose Stop the Steal. I repeatedly talked about the need to, we should litigate this. We shouldn't give Democrats an inch, that there's been fraud, that a lot of it. But people, there's sort of this weird abstract shift to that normatively, the argument is not that I think the reason I actually said, I posted this tweet that got racial into oblivion that said Biden won. He didn't win fair and square, but he won, and we need to be ready to deal with that. That was about pragmatism, because I was starting to see two things. One, people in complete denial that Biden was going to be taking office in 2 months. And two, people start getting really radical and start talking about, boycotting the stuff we see about boycotting the Senate and not voting in Georgia.
We still have to deal with the first thing on your list before we can work our way down.
No, it's not. It's because there's multiple ideals. Trump being in office is good, but that's up there with not letting Democrats have unified control of government, right? So clearly not my sole ideal. Clearly not the only good thing.
Well, if my ideal is I live to 150 years old, then number two is that each of those days are splendid and healthy, right? Yeah. So I understand that, but we still have to contend with number one of your ideal, right? No matter what, we've got to contend with it, and so do I. Mm-hmm. So do I, because Trump is anti-Chinese Communist Party, as I am. I think he's done a lot of good for trade. And whereas I think a Biden administration is going to be disastrous for a lot of people. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that, but I've already kind of forecasted that years ago. Right?
I agree. Sure.
And we've already seen it if you take a look at his picks. So, so number one is keeping him in office, then which requires a lot of legal combat, and it requires popular support.
Sure, I agree.
So how ideally would you like that popular support to express itself?
With rallies. I'm perfectly fine with rallies in support of the president. I'm perfectly fine with setting up.
What rallies have you seen recently to support?
They've been Stop the Steal rallies. I'm fine with that.
So do you feel that that's the only kind of exclusive expression?
Social media support is good.
Social media doesn't mean anything. We're talking about actual mobilization. I don't care about tweets, because that can be.
Whatever. I'm not an expert in terms of on the ground political operations. So whatever ones that would be good.
But those are the ones that we're all aware of. I know people from my neighborhood who are diehard Democrats, and they are actually in support of Stop the Steal, and. I think it's just because, and some of them voted for Biden, some of them didn't, but I don't really argue that too much, right? I'm not trying to interrogate them, but I know a lot of people that know that and kind of identify that with the resistance. So I think that Stop the Steal, then we're in agreement, is kind of the most visible, mobilized expression of Trump support.
Sure.
Okay. So then, so Trump stays in office in that scenario. And in that scenario, being that the executive controls it, now you still have a challenge of winning the Senate seat, which I know is also important to you.
No, right? If, the Senate seats are going to come down to a special election that happens in weeks, I think they're independent, right? The question of whether or not, if we manage somehow to win the presidency, then obviously we have the vice presidency and we keep the majority. but like
otherwise
they're independently correlated, or they're independent variables.
I just want to understand what number 2 is on your list, because if Trump wins, and there's got to be some type of kind of a branching tree that from there, all these policies, and we can't discuss all.
I mean, actually, number 1 is not Trump winning. Number 1 is Democrats don't control the government, right? Democrats don't have unified control over the government. That's more important to me than any particular race, including the presidency, right? That's like a supreme goal, because the consequences of that, as I've said, will be absolutely catastrophic for the conservative movement.
Is that obtainable? Is that obtainable right now for that outcome?
For the Democrats? I think Democrats could.
For the Republicans, is that objective?
Sure.
That you see
absolutely
obtainable
absolutely.
Right now?
We can absolutely, by winning these Senate races in Georgia, prevent Democrats from having unified control of government. Yes.
Okay, so that's actually even above Trump. So now I just wanted to understand kind of the priorities, like in the boardroom we would call it 1A, and that's how we would allocate.
Right. It's like 1A, right? Like 1 is avoid complete catastrophe, and then 1A is like then good. Let's get some good things too, right? But averting complete catastrophe is very, very important.
And you feel that Loeffler, her, and Perdue winning would avoid complete catastrophe? Yes. In what way? Just in a vanity metric of how many Republicans?
No, I mean, this is the power of Democrat Senate, a Democrat-controlled Senate, along with Biden, a Democrat-controlled House, means all sorts of things. It means, first, I think they will end up packing the court. Like, I think Manchin will end up coming around, packing the Supreme Court.
There's not even a doubt they're going to pack the court.
Right. Okay. So packing the court is a catastrophic, is an absolutely devastating outcome for conservative rights in like a number of ways. Not just that, any hope of ever doing anything about abortion goes out the window. Any hope of ever you will lose your Second Amendment rights. That's just off the top. Religious freedom gone. Every like close politically contested 5-4 that conservatives have won in the past 20 years gone over. It becomes a completely politicized court. Also that, in addition to that, helps restructure our voting rules so that Republicans can't win again the same way that state Supreme Courts have created mischief elsewhere.
So it's important for you that Loeffler and Perdue win because that catastrophe can be avoided.
Yes.
How are you certain that catastrophe can be avoided if they win?
Because we would have a majority and we have influence over Republican senators, say for Mitt Romney. And even those that are flaky like Romney are still trying to be Republican in some sense and are not going to vote for the most radical, extreme structural changes to our government.
And if Loeffler doesn't vote in agreement with you, then what do you do?
Then Loeffler votes for packing the court, is what you're saying?
Why wouldn't she?
As a caveat, why wouldn't she? Because she would be a Republican and would be thrown out of office. I mean, she'd be primaried, she'd be cast out of the party.
When would she be cast out of the party? Within
5 years. Are we really? I mean, this is an unbelievably low probability outcome. Senators want to retain their jobs, especially someone as young as Loeffler. Like Perdue's a consistent conservative. That's the basis for. I mean, Jeff Flake ended up voting for Kavanaugh, right? Like and he didn't want to. Like the power. I mean, the ability of someone like Mitch McConnell, who would be infuriated about this, like. These are astonishingly low probability.
And you think that
would vote for packing the court.
And you said earlier that you think that there's a high probability that there was a lot of fraud from county to county, district to district fraud.
I mean, are we like generally across the country? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to litigate that right now, but I mean, there is some reason for suspicion, right? And part of that occurred in Georgia.
I mean, there's part of the suspicions about fraud occurred in Georgia, yes.
And so what ostensibly has Loeffler and Perdue done what demonstration have they done to challenge that fraud that occurred in Georgia?
I mean, they've made statements about wanting public recounts, public elections. They haven't stood with Stop the Steal, but they're independent.
Stop the Steal.
What? Well, I mean, because Stop the Steal is trying to blackmail them into supporting their rallies or something like that.
Okay, but then for them to join Stop the Steal means that they would keep that Senate seat that means so much to them, and it would be ostensive proof that they do also demand some real investigation of of potential fraud in Georgia.
Well, I mean, Stop the Steal is not just making accusations about what Democrats did. They're making accusations against Loeffler herself, that she was the beneficiary of fraud by Brian Kemp, and that those accusations, in my mind, are being made completely without evidence. Moreover, again, now at this point, they've come out and said, do not donate to these people, do not vote for them.
Well, why?
I mean, that's not, I don't expect them to like be blackmailed into supporting people who are saying, don't vote for me, don't vote for these people, don't donate to them.
Blackmail. But you are, because you're saying that if she doesn't do as she promises as a Republican, the blackmail as a voter is we're going to vote you out of office next time. That is.
I think there's a pretty big difference between like the subtle basic like adhere to the Republican Party platform, don't do crazy things,
but isn't the
versus like support our rallies.
But isn't part of the Republican platform we're against cheating?
Yeah, and they've come out and said they're against cheating and against fraud. I don't like. Is it? I mean, or you can say first, is this like on the big question, are they against cheating? Obviously, and I think
when you say she's come out against it, because I did some investigation of this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really see her broadcasting the accusations of fraud that occurred in Georgia. I mean, I just don't see it.
Well, I mean, again, like which accusations are we talking about here? Are we talking about like absentee ballot fraud, or are we talking about the accusation that's being made by like people who are also, again, there's another important element here which isn't being talked about, that some of the primary purveyors of this theory are former Doug Collins supporters who are out there who are upset that they didn't beat Doug Collins or they didn't beat Kelly, right? They thought that Senate seat should have been his and not hers.
Let's now look at the palace intrigues, right? Because you and I can't confirm the palace intrigues. We can just talk about what is trend.
Well, we can't confirm the fraud, right? Like we're speculative about the fraud.
Okay,
right?
But the fraud,
like it seems like a little bit of a dodge to say that like we can't talk about the palace intrigue when there's plenty of reasonable evidence to suggest it, and then be like, oh, we assume the fraud forgiven, right? If we're gonna be allowed to be speculative, I got to be able to speculate too.
Then let me speculate. The Queen of England came here on a private jet, handed off $500 million to Loeffler, and then flew off to Panama. Okay, so let's not too much
I agree.
Okay,
I agree that that's ridiculous speculation. Agreed.
Right,
but I would put that on the level of like the voting machines were hacked, given the fact that Republicans won all over the country. Republicans got the majority in both Senate races, even if they didn't get enough to get past the runoff.
But we're only talking about Loeffler. I mean, in Georgia, there does seem to be plenty of evidence, expert evidence, because I know some of the people, right? And I've spoken with some of the people. I've spoke with Hari, who's what's called an ethical hacker. He's the top election hacker. I actually even had him speak with the Plot Against the People woman. I forgot her name, but she's so sweet, and we spoke. And I know she's been, part of this as kind of in her own pursuit, I guess, maybe almost dedication to it. So I do know a lot of ethical hackers, and this is well documented, going well back, all the suspicions about these things, and there was a lot of suspicious activity. But I just haven't seen any demonstration from Loeffler on a big platform with a big, loud microphone saying that there has to be accountability. So forgetting about all the palace intrigue,
I think she certainly has. I mean, like she's come out and said like we want a full recount. They had like joint press releases for doing Loeffler. So
right,
like is it just not sufficiently supportive of this particular movement? Is that the issue? And because that they should be boycotted? I think it's nonsense.
How do press releases satisfy you? I mean, Lindsey Graham has been sending out press releases for 4 years about we got to get to the bottom of this, of this Russiagate, corruption that brought in Mueller, and Lindsey Graham's been sending out emails, but has been writing letters and never sending them for the last 4 years.
I mean, if Stop the Steal had not gone this route of going to accuse, here's the thing, like this is why I'm totally forgiving of Loeffler and Perdue not showing up at any Stop the Steal rallies. If the organizers of Stop the Steal had completely refrained from accusing Loeffler herself of committing fraud without basis, and if they had completely refrained from any sort of insinuation that people shouldn't donate to these two people when they are the firewall that protects us all from losing the Senate, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, they should go to these rallies. But given that they did, given that the organizers of Stop the Steal did in fact essentially accuse Loeffler of fraud, say that people shouldn't donate to Loeffler and Perdue, say that people shouldn't vote for Loeffler and Perdue unless they did exactly what they wanted. I have no problem with them ignored it. And you'll notice that like the vast majority of like even popular Republicans are criticizing this. I mean, you go down the list, Don Trump Jr., Charlie Kirk, I mean, all the way, like almost every major Republican influencer is saying, this is absurd. Vote for the Republican Senate candidates. This is the key to preserving our majority. And yet you have like Sydney and Lynn out here like spinning essentially like a theory that they do not have substantive evidence for. I'm sorry, this theory that the voting machines are rigged is without evidence, without basis.
Well, it's not without evidence. It's without investigation. There's a big difference. There's plenty of evidence. There's no investigation.
And I mean, of the voting machines, like what's the evidence other than like, I mean, I've read the affidavits. They're like affidavits about a different company's machines used 10 years ago in Venezuela.
No. I've read them all. I was actually really, I had a lot of, intellectual inquisitiveness about it.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to explore it. And I describe it as letting my mind sweat, right? And, it requires a lot of effort. So I read, C.J. Pearson's thing. I've read a whole bunch of things. And there is definitely plenty of evidence that can be resolved through investigation. And there hasn't been an investigation, right? So,
okay, so I'm all for an investigation. Is the only thing that...
But we're talking about Loeffler. Is Loeffler all for an investigation? Do you think she is?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think she cares. I don't see a reason why she wouldn't be.
But then if she's for an investigation, then she should be for Stop the Steal, right?
I mean, again, like organizers of Stop the Steal said really nasty things about her that were without basis. I don't see a reason why she has to support that movement. I think it's incumbent, let me finish this. I think it's absolutely incumbent upon the organizers of Stop the Steal to absolutely knock it off with going after Republican Senate candidates when they're the bulwark between us losing the Democrat Senate majority. I think it's absolutely unacceptable and irresponsible.
And I just want, because he made a lot of such really interesting points, and I want to attack them one by one.
Yeah, right? I understand that. That's fine.
They're like whack-a-mole, and you just had a lot of moles pop up.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to begin, but I might want to begin. Actually, I'm gonna go back to where we were before. So, if Loeffler is against fraud, right? Clearly, you said she's against fraud.
Yeah, sure, she's against fraud, of course.
And you're saying that she won't go to the Stop the Steal rallies because they said kind of nasty things about her. So why should she go? Why did they say nasty things about
her? As I said before, because like Linwood and others were in Doug Collins' camp and were very angry at Loeffler over sort of internecine Republican battles. I think ultimately that's where this starts. Okay,
so were they upset with her because she hasn't been part of the mobilization against demanding an investigation?
I mean, are we talking about like the organizers or the general base? Like, I don't attribute to the general base of people supporting Stop the Steal this sort of internecine Collins-Loeffler conflict, right? But like, if you're wondering why did the hostility towards Loeffler start, like that was very confusing to me, right? Like that was out of nowhere, because I thought most Republicans were basically on point with the idea that like it's pretty damn important to keep the Senate.
Okay, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about her supporting investigation of potential fraud in the election.
I'm sure she does. I'm pretty sure she said she did in a press release. Like I feel like we're going in circles.
No, we're not, because I'm just trying to figure out the difference, make some type of a distinction between a press release and actual pounding the street visibility with a bullhorn in her hand.
I mean, is she supposed to, like, we've already established that this is like the one big organizing rally. Stop the Steal is the one big centralized thing for these.
But she hasn't been a part of it. She sent out.
Yeah, because they've been absolute dicks to her. like Sidney Powell went out and said that Brian Kemp moved the election from Doug Collins to Kelly Loeffler. She said that without evidence.
Okay, so you're saying
she's not going to support those people at a rally. Like if people,
So you're saying she's kind of blackmailing them also, just as much as they're blackmailing her. I mean, you're saying that it's kind of mutually assured destruction then, because you said that they're essentially blackmailing her by not giving her their endorsement and not mobilizing on her behalf is some type of an assault because she's not engaging with them, right? And because they have you said that there is some palace intrigue, and I'll just accept that at face value because it could be. It doesn't make a difference. Politicians always have palace intrigue. So what? but so then apparently she's also engaged in that blackmail. I mean, apparently you're saying that it's kind of a mutual blackmail that's occurring. Is that how I understand it? I mean,
I wouldn't characterize like not going to someone's rally because they insulted you and accused you of fraud, like as you blackmailing them. It's just like, I'm not not to put too fine a point on it. Like, I don't associate with Ali for reasons we could get into, but like, I don't. And part of the reason is because I've had bad experiences with the guy in the past. I'm not blackmailing him by refusing to work with his organizations or.
I know.
Right.
I might have come across aggressive, but that's just kind of my nature sometimes.
I know, but like, so that's what I mean. Like, if I think flip it around, right? Like everybody should be a Republican and kind of going in the same direction. The sort of initial breach of the sort of comity is the breach of going after Kelly Loeffler and saying she won her primary election through fraud, or beat Doug Collins through fraud.
Do you feel that there was a fraud that in her election, that there perhaps could have been fraud in her own election?
I mean, I think let's distinct between fraud on the margins and fraud at the core, right? Like, I'm a believer that there's been fraud on the margins everywhere. And by that, I mean things like mail-in voting fraud, registration fraud, ballot, some ballot stuffing, right? But like, that's the sort of classic, like we're adding ballots to the system so from the outside. And then there's like fraud at the core, which would be control of the voting machines, like flip it, literally being able to control the outcome, flip all the votes you want the way you want. In all these elections, I think there is probably plenty of fraud on the margins. We have plenty of evidence of dead people voting, evidence of like poll watchers not being allowed to like see things. Like I was even there on the ground in Philly for that.
You're awesome.
Yeah. So
I think you're great. I truly do. You know that we've had conversations long before.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. You're awesome. I've listened to your debates. I mean, you're awesome. You're so articulate, elegant, and eloquent, man. You're a gentleman, right?
I appreciate that.
You're a true Renaissance man.
Oh, very nice. It's very kind.
You are, and I'm a fan of Human Events, which you know as well.
Yeah.
And I love its legacy because we discussed that a long time ago, right? So when you first did it, but I just want to get an understanding because I know that I did a Periscope with Ali, because I thought that Ali was being smeared, right? And I thought and at the same time, I'm very much for Stop the Steal. Right? I think a lot of people know that, and I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, but I also am so compassionate for those mothers in Baltimore and Chicago, and I feel that they've been deplatformed, right? And I worry about that happening as a franchise, city to city. And
I agree. I mean, I think like in terms of actual voting reform, like we should be pushing like the end of permission-free mail-in voting, right? Like you should have, in Japan, it's something like you have to get a medical, you have to get a doctor's note before you can vote.
There's a lot of differences. And without getting too much into it within other voting systems, you see, most other countries don't have open elections. They don't have open primaries. Okay.
Right.
Most other countries don't have open primaries, which means you don't get to vote for who you want to be the head of the party ticket.
Sure.
It's an internal thing. The party decides for you who's going to be the head of the party ticket. Right.
Right.
But here in America, we have open primaries.
Mm-hmm.
So we have more of a requirement for fraud to stack the deck a little bit, like the casino, like the house has the advantage. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we still have a problem that, and now we're going to get a law, so we're not going to go about it as eclectic as we might have wanted to, right? But we still have a problem that Kelly, right, has whose own election perhaps was tainted by fraud, has not been in dogged pursuit, right? I mean, if that for Ali and Stop the Steal and Bostic and all those other people, I know Ali the most. So I think other people have been involved in it. I don't mean to in any way minimize their efforts, but the way I look at it, those guys are kind of driving. They're like in that scene in French Connection, I've
only seen the movie once, and I saw it like 20 years ago. So
there's a car chase scene,
right? And
those guys right now are the ones who are doing the chasing, right? And it's really exciting. They're the good guys in a way, and I see Loeffler kind of as the one who's being chased. And it seems to me like they don't want to arrest her or do anything else. They just want her to have some type of an agreement that there was fraud, and that she's going to be she's going to use her current platform to be a participant in its investigation.
I mean, I don't know exactly what they want. I've seen, because I feel like there's like maybe Lynn Wood wants something different than Ali, wants something different than Sidney Powell. I don't know, right? Like, you know, and to the extent that I've attributed beliefs to the stop, because I just realized like Stop Steal organizers don't include like Lynn and Sidney. I don't think, right? They're like sort of adjacent, but not, it's not made out of the same organization. So I may have made some mistakes earlier in terms of attributing things to Stop Steal organizers that are really just individualized to Lynn and Sidney. But like the general problem is the same, right? Like Lynn and Sidney are out there accusing, like telling people not to vote for Loeffler and Perdue, or demanding that like Loeffler and Perdue meet their list of requirements before people go.
Is that unreasonable?
Absolutely. 2 weeks before an election, absolutely unreasonable, especially given the circumstances.
Okay.
Absolutely unreasonable.
So what you're saying, and I just want to get an understanding of it,
Yeah.
right? And everybody here probably or maybe not doesn't know my role as a Democrat, so you can Google it for me.
Right, yeah.
I know a lot of people.
Everybody, so is apparently Lynn Wood. Apparently all the Democrats don't think we should vote for the Republican Senate candidate. Weird how that works.
But that could be part of the palace intrigues also, right?
Right.
So we don't know how that works. So let's just forget about
Right.
that, right? Because the world's a crazy place. So if I understand correctly, that everybody that basically she's blackmailing everybody and using the term they use, and it's not really a good term, but I understand it in kind of a generous spirit, right? Is that everybody then has to vote for her and get her into office, and in the hope of that once she's in office, she'll be some type of a bulwark. But people don't have a choice. People don't have the right to make demands of her in advance of the election.
I mean, I think like the consequences of doing so are, I mean, people like on the one hand say that the consequences of Democrats being in control is such that we need to like, basically everybody must be 100% behind every single legal challenge to get Trump in office, because that's important. And I actually, I'm sympathetic to that, because Trump is so, controlling the executive branch is so important. Trump is such a strong president, et cetera. But then to turn around and be like, and it's okay if we lose these Senate races because Loeffler isn't with us enough on Perdue. Like, pick one, guys, right? Like,
Okay,
either
if
Trump's thing is so important, then why isn't controlling the Senate so important too? Like, why? Like, the whole reason, you see everybody sees Trump as a bulwark against the craziness of the left, like, but then the Senate isn't.
Can I ask you a hypothetical question? And I'm perfectly receptive to a hypothetical answer.
Sure.
Okay? Mm-hmm. If Loeffler votes aligned with the Democrats, there's not a recourse for 5 years.
Sure.
Okay. So right now, people have to vote for her with a tremendous amount of urgency, and not permitted to have any type of daemon internal discourse or any type of interplay with ideas or interplay within.
I mean, there's sort of like the abstract interplay of ideas is fine,
but like, if she's not a participant, then there really can't be that.
Like, I mean, are we talking about specific to fraud? Like, she has participated somewhat in this with her press releases. She's got 100% pro-Trump voting record, I'm pretty sure. Like, she toes the line. Like, she's been in office for years and toed the line entirely. Like, what is the basis for saying she wouldn't toe the line going forward?
Well, but she hasn't toed the line now. And she's
whose line, right? Like, I mean, the Republican standard line or Stop the Steals line?
Trump is the GOP, is the head of the GOP.
I mean, I've seen nothing that's saying that about Trump saying. I mean, Trump's saying go vote for Loeffler and Perdue, right? Yeah, like, where's the? I don't see any disconnect between Trump and the Georgia Senate candidates. They're on the same page.
Well, again, we're keeping palace intrigues out of it. We're keeping the things we don't know out of it. So I don't care about her supporting, particularly supporting. It's not required. I don't think it's a requirement. It is a requirement that she support Trump and she support the GOP ticket. But part of supporting Trump, then I suppose, would be challenging this the integrity of the election.
Well, I mean, like with Stop the Steal, because again, like understand, like Sidney Powell wasn't on the Trump team until she wasn't, right? Like the stuff about the voting machines, I can't speak to some of this Powell centric. The stuff about the voting machines that she couldn't substantiate got the other Trump lawyers so frustrated they ultimately kicked her off the team. That's my understanding.
But right? that's inconsequential to Kelly Loeffler. It doesn't make a difference.
Right. But like, again, that gets to the question of whose line has she been towing? She's been towing the line of the president. She's been towing the line of the Republican Party, both of which are inexorably opposed to packing the courts and all the catastrophic outcomes we're talking about.
But then she doesn't care about it, because if she's towing all that line, then she should easily win in Georgia. Right.
Well, because, I mean, it depends. Like, it depends if people like Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell are successful in throwing in doubt, accusing her of fraud, and demoralizing a huge chunk of the Republican base by asserting that the election is completely rigged and not overcomable by turnout. Like, I don't think that's good. I think it's very destructive to tell your own base that the election machines are rigged without serious evidence and being able to prove it on the spot to the point that everybody agrees with that.
Has Loeffler been in the pursuit of truth, do you feel? What has she done in the pursuit of truth? She's like put out Senate releases, supported all the recounts. Like, what is the demand of her? It's like we are, again, I mean, it feels like the Stop the Steal has put her in the stubble bind. It's gone after her personally, right? Or like supported people who've gone after her personally. I don't know, like, maybe Ali has stayed away from saying that Loeffler won by fraud, but Lynn Wood and Sidney Powell sure have said that she won her election by fraud, right? And so she's either got to support this movement that's accusing her of having won her election by fraud, and go speak on the rallies and get on the stage with the people who've accused her of winning by fraud, or she's not doing enough, right? Like, does she need to set up an independent organization to check fraud? Like, do you feel that the former is an unreasonable expectation of her?
Yes, absolutely. Totally unreasonable, because it was totally unreasonable of those people to make that assertion in the first place. Not being good Republicans at all.
So you're saying in absolute terms, she is unwilling to meet with her own electorate. It's what you just said.
No, I did not say that. I said, like, a rally organized by
and who heard that rally? Weren't Georgia voters at that rally?
What's up?
Wasn't Georgia voters at that rally?
Sure, why would she
that rally addressing her own electorate?
She can address her own electorate in a number of different ways. Why does she have to share a platform with people who are accusing her of fraud?
Because she can be responsive to them.
She can be responsive without sharing a platform with them like that. It seems, I don't know. Like, I think your expectations of what, the sort of burden on her are enormous, and especially compared to the expectations that you're placing on the organizers of Stop the Steal to not be going out there and undermining the Republican Party by platforming people who are saying don't vote for Republican Senate candidates.
But then she's undermining the Republican Party herself by not demanding by not visibly mobilizing to demand an investigation of the voting.
I mean, I feel like she's done that, for one, with her press releases, full recount, full audit, whatever. Again, we're not reading them, but I've read everything. And I'm sorry, whatever, her not essentially towing the correct line, from the Stop the Steal's perspective, whatever damage that's doing to the Republican Party as a whole is far more insubstantial than the damage that the people who are saying don't vote for Republican Senate candidates are doing. That is doing enormous damage to the cause.
But I don't understand.
It needs to stop.
So you're saying Biden was accused of hiding out, right? And just kind of trying to win by not being Trump and just kind of hiding in the basement. And that was a reasonable tactic to run a campaign with, right? Why not? So Loeffler is basically hiding in the basement, sending out press releases, and people should vote for her.
Yes, even assuming that your characterization is correct, yes.
So then you're saying for the next 5 years she's going to vote like a Republican, and she's not going to hide in her basement sending out press releases.
Yeah, she's at the minimum. She's not going to vote for packing the court. She's not going to vote for adding Supreme Court seats, for adding Puerto Rico and DC estates, for doing the things that Democrats have threatened to do repeatedly if they got power. No, she's not going to do those things. The odds that she would are infinitesimal.
Okay, well that's a great epistemological argument, but there's been no proof that she's offered, because from day one, which is, let's just say today, she is not doing anything but hiding in her basement, sending out press releases. But when Marco Rubio goes out there and says, let's bring in 20 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, and make them legal, that's when she's going to get all mobilized, and that's when she's going to go out and fight the cause. And you're saying that, trust me, she's not going to be hiding in her basement, sending out press releases.
Well, I don't care if she hides in her. I mean, there's like a million Republican senators who don't do anything, right? Like other than vote what the way Mitch McConnell tells them.
Okay,
right?
then a million senators aren't currently running for office. She's running for office in a high seat.
But like, again, like, I mean, I guess people just, it's like, I feel like there's just this disconnect. It's like people don't know what time it is, or maybe they do, but they're like, essentially allowing themselves to compartmentalize when they think it's actually urgent or not, right? There's like there's this thought that's like, it is absolutely urgent that Trump win the White House because Democratic control of the executive branch is an absolutely unacceptable outcome. So we need to do everything in our power and and to get there. And then also saying, whatever, so what, we lose the Senate, who cares? Those beliefs to me are not simpatico, that they do not sync up, right? Like, I think here's how I reconcile them, right? From my perspective, so people understand where I'm coming from. I think it's very, very important to hold on to the executive branch, and very, very important to hold on to the Senate. And it is of extraordinary importance not to use both.
Why?
Because very important to hold on to the executive branch, because the executive branch wields enormous power through its agencies, right?
Okay.
Right. And without oversight from the Senate, there's only so much a legislature can do. Very important to hold the Senate, because the Senate is in control of appointments. And so if you control the presidency, but not the Senate, as Joe Biden's about to find out, you're really constrained in a way you don't want to be, because every person you would appoint to head a cabinet agency has to go through the opposition party, which that's not ideal, right? I mean, it really constrains what your government can do ultimately, because you wield power through the executive agencies. Losing both is catastrophic, because not only, especially, does it mean like president does whatever he wants, but it also means that in the current environment, we lose like all these other things, packing the court, new states, et cetera. So I think it's very, very important to hold on to each of them, and then of extreme importance not to lose both, right? Absolute importance not to lose both. My point is, as a lawyer and as someone who's assessed the odds of us winning the presidency at this point in time, they are very, very low. Like, I think the odds of Trump still being in office on January 22nd or whatever are about 1% to 2%, and that's being generous, right? Because he has to run the table in multiple states to reverse certification orders. Like, it's not just one state. Even if he just wins Georgia, like, he still needs to win Pennsylvania, still needs to win Arizona. These are all long shots that require judges to do things they don't like doing, right? Like overturning an election result, very activist.
But we're not talking about that.
No. Like, this is, let me finish the argument so you understand my perspective, right? And whereas the ability to hold, so that's a 1% to 2% chance. And the other hand, to this other very important thing, we have like a 65 to 70% chance of winning, right? Like, we won the majorities in both the runoffs votes. Like, even that's evidence there isn't like massive fraud at the core that would prevent us from winning the runoff elections. And it also says we're favorites going into January, assuming we all don't self-destruct and decide we're not going to vote for the Senate candidates. If we do that, if we hold on to the Senate, we have held on to something very important, prevented catastrophic outcomes, done all sorts of good things for conservatives, and set us.
No, you haven't prevented catastrophic outcomes. You don't have the right to predict. You have to do. You don't have the right to be able to make those predictions on the information that right now you have. The only information you have right now is that she is not in hot pursuit of investigating fraud.
I mean, so I think there is maybe 100 times more evidence that Kelly Loeffler will not vote to pack the court than there is that there was election fraud. And there's a lot of evidence of election fraud. But like, if we're weighing probabilities here, we have, I think there was election fraud. I think it's more likely than not there was election fraud. But I think the odds that Kelly Loeffler votes against, votes for packing the court, 0.01%, 0.001. I mean, these are infinitesimally small outcomes. How about
for just open door, and let's not argue kind of the taxonomy of that. Let's just say open immigration. Okay.
Open immigration, also very low, 1% to 2%.
Okay.
I mean,
why do you suspect that?
Like, because she's running on the very opposite platform. She's run on an anti-amnesty platform. She's like tied to the Trump movement.
You feel that she's running on a platform against cheating an election?
Yeah. Yes, in the general sense, right? Like,
I mean,
why was she? Who runs on pro cheating platform?
But she sent out a press release saying she's against cheating in elections, right?
Yes.
So that's part of what she believes.
Yes.
Okay, but she hasn't done anything other than kind of telegraph her a punch that won't be delivered. She hasn't done any further type of voter electorate outreach. Right?
I mean, I don't know what she's done again, but again, we talked about this problem earlier. Like the problem is that the sole organization on the ground in Georgia doing this has decided to accuse, or at least people right adjacent to them and people who are on their platform have decided to accuse her of winning her election through fraud. Right. So she's not going to support those people. Like, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect her to. So like the question is like, I don't know why everybody decided that it was a good idea to accuse her of fraud in this way without basis. I think it is very, very damaging to the Republican Party. I think that should be disavowed, frankly, by the people who are the organizers, right? Like just straight up, like disavow the idea that like the current Republican Senate candidates committed fraud. Like that seems like a good thing to start doing. And I mean, and then this problem would have been averted entirely if this hadn't happened. Right. Like then Kelly Loeffler would be on the stage talking about like how we need to fight this. But they picked a fight with their own Senate candidate for no reason, without evidence, accused her of winning her election through fraud. Absurd.
OK, so I just want to understand, because ultimately your argument, and you and I are friends, and there's a lot of questions. So we're going to take the questions. Some of them are going to be supportive. Some of them are going to be critical. And I'm not critical of you. I just want to get to the heart of what.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's a passionate argument, but I'm not. Obviously, I don't take things personally.
Okay. So, but part of your, of your expectation of her, right, is kind of what happens in the future and you're kind of anticipating the future. And you're saying she's going to vote in this way. She's going to vote in this way and vote in this way. And I don't understand how you can, based upon what we have right now, you can't possibly base those decisions on knowledge. I mean, you can't. The future is contingent upon decisions that people have not yet made.
I mean, these are just not votes that Republicans will make. I mean, Republicans will not vote to pack the Supreme Court when they have a 6-3 majority. Even Mitt Romney had to vote for, Kavanaugh and Barrett.
Understanding that you're anticipating a future, and that future is contingent upon decisions that those people have not even yet made. Right. So we don't know what those decisions are going to be, and what effect they will have can't be accurately anticipated.
I mean, by that logic, though, like why elect President Trump? Right. Like it's completely unknown what he will do. Right. Like we can't project the future about what he'll do in the next 4 years. But
to know what I'm saying is, for you to guess correctly about Kelly Loeffler and about, the future and, all the contingencies of the future, you would have to know the decisions and the consequences that others will make also. So, I mean, you've got a very abstract argument because it's certainly not grounded in what we're seeing.
Oh, I think you're completely wrong there, right? Like the idea that it is mere abstract to say that Kelly Loeffler were not about to pack the court is just as abstract to say. I mean, it would be similarly abstract to make any prediction about what President Trump would do in the next 4 years, and yet we've all sort of agreed that President Trump winning is of extreme importance, right? Like, so I like the idea that like predicting what a elected official will do if they're of their party. Obviously, there are places in the middle, marginal decisions that they might make differently, but then there are the obvious ones.
But for Kelly's platform, and then I want to take the questions because everyone's so nice.
People have been waiting patiently.
Platform is against voting corruption. And yet, if that's her platform, because she sent out a press release, so she must believe that, right? If that's her platform, she's unwilling to pursue aggressively an investigation, and visibly an investigation, and to be part of an already mobilized effort that she just has to kind of have a role within. It's already been franchised out around the country for Stop the Steal. So right now, we have a lot of imperfect information about the future, and we don't know, a lot of anticipations about it. And it's, again, like I've described, but what we know right now is that based upon her own platform, she is not obliging to her own platform.
I mean, I don't think we know that. I think even in a very uncharitable characterization of her behavior, it's still understandable, given that the people she apparently would have to associate with and support are the people who are accusing her of committing fraud in her own election. I mean, I think it's a pretty extreme demand, honestly, like under the circumstances, not normally, but under the circumstances.
But do you feel that a politician can just hide out in their basement, or they have to be responsive to their electorate?
Well, Biden just, apparently is going to be president.
Do you feel that Loeffler has to be responsive to the electorate, or she can just hide out in her basement?
No, I think it's good to be responsive to her electorate, but again, now we're making normative descriptive too.
We're not, because you're saying, I just want to know if Kelly Loeffler should be responsive to her electorate or hide out in the basement.
In general, yes,
but not in this instance.
I mean, I don't think the entirety of her electorate expects her to stand on stage with people who are accusing her of election fraud.
But she can be responsive to them. I mean, is that such a?
I think she has been with her press releases and her other public statements. I mean, she'll be doing rallies this week, right? Like, I'm pretty sure she'll be on stage in Georgia. She just isn't with this particular organization.
She'll be doing rallies that are in support of her, right? Because it's going to be Trump or Pence or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But she's not going to be challenging those people who are in opposition to her, right? She's not in any way willing to engage in any type of discussion or dialogue or any type of discourse with those people who have these complaints about her. I think there were
is this something they need that she has to engage with? Like,
if she wants to get elected,
to that basis that she committed election fraud?
Yes, if she wants to get elected, she does.
I disagree. I think that's not true. I don't think you have to engage with people who accuse you of election fraud without basis. I don't think so.
If she loses, is it because of Stop the Steal, or is it because she was unwilling to engage with an electorate that was accusing her of some type of malfeasance or misfeasance?
If she loses, you can attribute it to any number of causes. I think it is a strong contributing factor that the people adjacent to Stop the Steal and others were essentially demanding that people not donate to her, not vote for her, and that accusing her of fraud without basis. I think that's all very unhelpful, and I think that if she manages to lose this election, it will largely be because it does not help to randomly start saying that the voting machines are rigged, demoralizing your own voters, making the whole thing think it's rigged, as opposed to getting out there and motivating people to vote and overcome whatever fraud on the margins there is.
So she is asking everybody to be her surrogate while she hides out in the basement sending out press releases because she's unwilling to confront the electorate.
I don't know to what extent she's actually done public appearances and made public statements. I know I've seen press releases on Twitter. That's all I've seen. I'm not actively following the on the ground events on Georgia.
The most exciting thing of the GOP of the last 2 years, maybe even of the last 3 years, was today. That rally was crazy, man.
It was insane. It was extreme. I was really, really troubled by it. I thought Lynn Wood was out there. I thought it was just, if you're a Republican, you do not say the things Lynn Wood was saying. Now, maybe he's like, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent. I'm like, okay, but then you're a guy who's only voted in Democrat primaries ever, and you're telling us to vote for Democrats, not vote for Republican senators. I'm going to treat you like a Democrat. Don't be, if you're a Republican and you actually care about the values that are embodied in the Republican Party platform, the bulwark to that is a Republican Senate right now, because those values are very much under threat.
But if people care about the Republican platform and they care about Loeffler's platform, from what you've said, is against fraud because she sent out that memo. So
sure.
We're all in agreement that we're against fraud.
Yes.
And now where is she in the mobilization to pursue truth?
I expect that she'll be talking about that on the stump next week. I think, the fact that she hasn't engaged with people accusing her of fraud is not indicative of her beliefs.
They're not just accusing her of fraud, it's her electorate. They're not just people. It's her electorate. Those are the people she wants to vote because she wants to win.
Right. And I think the responsible thing to do is to stop encouraging that, to simply, my complaint is not with the base, but these accusations kind of just didn't come from the base. They came out of, they came from people like Sidney Powell all of a sudden laying out this putting out this accusation that the voting machines were all rigged and they were rigged for Kelly Loeffler against Doug Collins. Like, that's a nonsense accusation without evidence.
I concede that I don't like the arguments that they're making. I think they're very valid, but they're, you and I, we're in agreement, and we're, as we get to people's questions, we'll discuss where we are in agreement. I think that it's very difficult. And you and I were discussing this before. Trump has two disadvantages. He's got time.
Yep.
Right. And he's got the battle of complexity. Right.
Yes. I mean, and the big problem, and we can talk about the problems of the legal work. One of the big ones is their failure to simplify the case. Right. Like, the big problem with like the Kraken and the Powell complaints, it's not just like the typos and stuff. It is the lack of focus. Right. They pile 30 or 40 allegations, all of which are roughshod, and rather than clearly explaining a clear story that they could then and that they can prove and substantiate in a way that persuades normal, like, other people. And I think
it's a disadvantage they have. They have time as a disadvantage, and they have complexity because they're up against a very elaborate design, right?
Yeah, right. And that's I don't necessarily blame them for having a difficulty telling a simple story, because it's a really hard situation to do it. They're under immense time pressure. It's really late in the game. And, part of the big problem of the way that the fraud occurred in this election is that it occurs in the backdrop of a setup of laws by Mark Elias and the Democrat lawyers that made it harder to detect fraud. Like, the reason we don't like mail-in voting is because it's easier to commit fraud and get away with it and do it in a way that's not detectable, right? Like, think about something as simple as, somebody coerces their family member and steals their ballot and goes to the poll and votes with it. And the family member just is like, fine, I wouldn't have voted that way, but whatever, take my ballot. Like, can we catch that? I don't think we can. But there's like the whole structure of this election is fraud but a lot of fraud in ways that we can't prove. Hopefully, I think the only thing that really is like a hope is like the Brainerd allegations, where he's like done provable lists of like, look, here's all the people who are in the National Change of Address database who have moved away from the state who voted here. Right. That's enough. That's a real provable, like, unquestionable item of like fraud. But in general, it's really hard to prove.
It is. It's very difficult to prove when it's baked in at the OEM. Do you know what I mean by that? When it's baked in at the when it's baked into something's baked into your Apple iPhone rather than just download it as an app. There's a big difference in trying to do the forensics on it. Yeah. We're gonna take some questions, man, and you're
right.
on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and some of them are going to be critics, man.
I've been sort of looking at the comments on the side, and I can tell that people are not happy. So I'm happy to take adversarial questioning any day, as I think the demonstration that I was here for you.
And I've always said, I'm pro Ali, and I don't really pay attention to people's past too much, because I've heard some smears against him, and I've heard smears against me and smears against friends. And Mike Milken was a friend from 30 years ago, and I remember the smears against him. And right. So I've been in politics my whole life. I've given more money than most people. I know everybody. I've got everybody in my cell phone. I've seen some horrible things, man. I've seen some horrible things.
Ollie did accuse me of being an opioid addict and a potential mass shooter. So, I don't really forget something like that.
Yeah, but you got to mark people to the market. You got to. Life's a crazy thing, man. You got to mark people to the market.
I don't know. I mean, I have fool me once, shame on, I've had enough bad experiences with a guy that I won't deal with.
I know that you guys have a beef. I didn't know what the substance of it was, but I think you got to mark people to the market. And I think that's some type of phenomenon that we're all going to have to just recalibrate ourselves to. So Pump House PBC, I'm going to respond to it first, and then Pump House PBC. I recognize that picture. I forget who that was, but says, why don't you help out the Trump team with your vast knowledge, Will, instead of Monday AM quarterbacking BS? Let me respond to that first. Okay, because I want to be fair. Because I'm also I'm a fan of yours, man. I think you're awesome. I'm looking for you and I discussed it, that the conclusion of this might be kind of an ironic ending, and we might just get some apparatic outcome, and we have to and that is what it is. But but I think that there's a middle ground, right? And I think we both we both are willing to have some type of discussion to find that what that middle ground is. I would like the middle ground for Loeffler to be kind of more extensive now within the pursuit, I believe, of truth about corruption within that election within Georgia. But so they say, why don't you help out the Trump team with your vast knowledge, Will, instead of Monday quarterbacking BS?
I mean, I went on my own dime to Philadelphia and worked directly with the campaign to help, track instances of election fraud on the ground in Philadelphia, recorded the most viral video of the election on that day, which is the video of the poll watcher being excluded from a polling place in Philadelphia, 3.8 million views on that. And, offered my services in general to the Trump team, pro bono, up before the election. That said, I run a business. I'm not a lawyer, I don't actually practice law as my way of making money right now. I run Human Events, a conservative magazine, and I'm active on Twitter. I'm not just going to sit here and forgo all that without payment. So if the Trump campaign has not reached out to me for my legal services, if they wish to, they can also pay my rate, as I'm sure they're paying Rudy Giuliani's. But I don't, hard legal work, the type of legal work that is required to prevail on some of these things is something that I would need to uproot my life to go help them with. And if they were reached out to me and were willing to pay my fee, I'd be perfectly happy to do so. But until then, my job is being a conservative pundit and giving my legal analysis on Periscope and in public as I do. And this is, what I have been doing.
And so we're going to just show these. We're not going to respond to them right now because I think their tone might not be as generous as we would like to see within this. But I do want to say Awake 3ning says, so speaking up against election fraud is reckless.
No.
Okay.
Don't agree. I mean, obviously, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that going after Kelly Loeffler for election fraud charges that are without evidence, and when she's especially the Senate candidate of your own party, that's reckless.
Okay, and then this one's for me, so I take that back. Awake 3ning.
Yeah.
I saw your other comment next, and then I took this one because I think this one is sweeter. Okay, so I'll be responsive to this one. Where is Adam on the blessing of liberty? And I've got to be honest with you because I think about this stuff a lot. And Will's a lawyer, so I can't discuss. I'm not going to be challenged for piety or impiety because I've never read the founding documents. So I can't speak of what they are as well as Will can, because I know Will, I've seen a lot of Will's periscopes. So I don't want to present myself as something I'm not, right? I was brought up with an appreciation of the founding documents, but I never really read them. So I can't tell you, I can't be responsive to your question. Does that make sense to you, Will?
I mean, on the blessings of liberty, I don't know. I think it's, again, that question is really too vague to answer. Blessings of liberty is good. The blessings of liberty sound good, but the devil, as always, is in the details.
You read the federal papers, or you haven't?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, I think. I mean, I've got it sitting on my shelf somewhere here. I don't know exactly where it is.
Was it a requirement? Was it a requirement for you earlier on?
There was a brief class I took with Randy Barnett where it was required reading. So I did read it. I mean, they're very good. They shape a lot of how I think about the government. I think Hamilton's really the unappreciated genius of our founding. Even as much as it seems like the left loves him more, but he was definitely the unappreciated genius. And
I take it just because it's a hobby of mine, so I'm going to project it onto you like a blank screen, right? But I like reading the Scalia and Thomas's dissenting opinions. I think Scalia's, some of his opinions were awesome.
Oh, Scalia's brilliant. He's easily the model of what a conservative justice should be. Brilliant legal writer. And it was really law school that pushed me more to the right, if anything. I'd say I wasn't as far, as committed to the Republicans and to the conservative party, but just reading the difference between the opinions written by Republican justices and Democrat justices is it's stark. And it's on occasion the Democrats are okay, but a lot of times the Democrat opinions, especially in cases like Heller, for instance, I think if you were watching the Orrin Kerr debate, Kerr was well, I thought Heller was a close case. I'm I don't think it was a close case at all. I thought the Democrat opinions were ridiculous.
We're going to go on with that, though. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I listened to the audio of that. I thought, and Scalia, I think, did a lot with that case. I know he did a lot of commentary on that case. So Natalie Joe, Texas, and what a cute dog you have as a picture. So thank you, because I love doggies. Says Loeffler was appointed by Kemp.
Yeah, I get that. Right.
That also suggests its own palace intrigues, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, like there's some internal, I mean, that explains something of why, the Collins friends and benefactors are upset with Kemp and willing to lob these bombs at Loeffler, right? Like both ways. Like, I mean, I get that there's obviously Kemp has an incentive to see Loeffler win, but I also think that Collins people have a reason to be salty and, happy to throw these accusations around.
Sue's MCC3, and thank you very much for being here, and also a very nice picture. Says Will wanted to accept Biden days ago. We don't need weak leaders. You undermine our side.
No, I mean, so again, people seem to have confused, like this is my fault for phrasing it poorly, I guess. Confuse the descriptive and the normative arguments, right? Like normatively, I want Trump to win. And also normatively, I think it's good to press all the challenges to the end and do everything you can to try and fight. I see no reason to concede to the Democrats, like to make the transition easier, for example. Like I didn't care about that at all. I don't care about that one bit. But descriptively, the thing that was frustrating me immensely was two things. One was that people were out there like projecting that Trump, like people saying, absolutely, Trump will still be in office. I'm like, we're selling people false hope. That's not a good thing. People will be disillusioned if that's not true. And the odds of that being true are incredibly small. And then second, they're doing stuff like this stuff of like trying to boycott the Republican Senate races to somehow slightly increase the chances that they get what they want in Georgia. And I was just like, you've got the risk reward all wrong. And part of the reason the risk reward is all off is because you haven't properly assessed the current probability of Trump winning, right? Which is not high, it is low. And so that was sort of an attempt to be like, like the whole point is like, I think he cheated. I think he won by cheating, but I still think he's taking office in 2 months. And we as a movement like need to be able to grapple with that reality rather than saying like for sure Trump is going to take power.
Yeah, I understand that. And as a side note, you remember like 6 months ago or 5 months ago? I guess about 5 months ago, maybe 4 months ago. I don't know. I didn't mark it on my calendar.
I see something I want to ask. I want to answer. I see a comment. It's Janet and Lee's. If I can't click on them, you can, but I want to answer.
Let me say something and then tell me where it is, like what time it was sent. If you can tell me what time it was sent, I'll find it because I see Andrew Meyer, I see other people. Yeah. So tell me exactly what time it was sent. But
sorry. 9:46, Janet and Lee, but go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so do you remember when we spoke like 3 months ago and I broke your heart because I said Trump's going to lose and you were brokenhearted? I was measuring you, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an investor guy, so I measure people by how they're going to respond to stress, right? And to emotional law. Right?
Yeah.
How are they going to respond when their emotional energy has been depleted? And I saw you broken there a little bit. So I know where you stand. I genuinely do. Mm-hmm. I understand the lawyer in you, which is saying, listen, I need to keep some of my powder dry because I've got years of battles to be fighting. I understand it. Mm-hmm. It's just that I think that Trumpism is better with Stop the Steal emerging into some type of a conqueror of the GOP, because I think Loeffler is there to destroy MAGA. She will destroy MAGA. That's her job.
Yeah, I think that's overstating things. I think Loeffler is, happy to keep her seat. I mean, she from personal experience, like she personally sought out Jack Posobiec to go on his show. That she's been in a way that very few sitting senators have. I mean, like people underestimate why I actually have a positive opinion of Loeffler, but when a lot of people, are hands off towards like our side of the movement, like she's actually embraced us and embraced people like good friends of mine. Jack actually, whose wife is currently in labor. Can't wait to
No. I think it's more than that. I think she might have. She might. And behind me, I made my prediction because he won't tell me.
Uh-huh.
I made my prediction. And Jack is such a wonderful person.
Oh, yeah. Jack's great.
Can you see that?
I think it's a second boy.
I went down to the florist to get that. And right. I will tell you, today is also my wife's birthday. Right. So Tanya Posobiec chose very well. And our blessings for your child. So you say 9:43. So
9:46. Janet and Lee. Why didn't Will accept Ollie's offer early on to work with him on Stop the Steal?
Oh, that's such a good question. I want to find
is.
940. Do you see all those questions? It's a lot of questions, right?
Yeah, right. That one. Okay. So that's the one I wanted to answer. So just at the outset, right? Like, there's been a theme of me talking about, like, I don't expect Kelly Loeffler to work with people who've accused her of nasty things, right? So Ali accused me of being a mass shooter and an opioid addict, or a potential mass shooter rather, and an opioid addict on video. I've had, and that's not the last bad experience. I think he is still continuing to give a platform to an anti-Semite in Nick Fuentes. I have no idea why he insists on continuing to promote someone who said such noxious things about Jews. And it just, he knows that he said them. He seems utterly indifferent to it. And I also had personal experience with him that I like, there's other people I want to protect, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'm not convinced of his trustworthiness. And so it's a person like, and so to understand, like, this is just, it's not like I generally go out looking for fights with Ali. I'm doing my own thing. He's doing his, but I won't work with the guy, right? Like that's a personal thing. Like my life is not made better off generally by not working with people I don't trust, and not working with people who've accused me of horrible things and then not apologize for it. So that's why I don't work with them. I mean, I'm happy to, I've worked with the Trump campaign. I've been very, very, I think, if you look at my record, I've worked very hard to get Trump elected. And Human Events has published a lot of pro-Trump content, and we will continue to do so. But that doesn't mean I have to work with particular people who've made horrible accusations against me personally.
See, I'll give you my take on that. And Emily and I have spoken yesterday. We spoke days before, because I'm actually kind of impressed with him in a way. Right. I like the comeback story in America, because I love the comeback story, actually. I like the rags to riches to rags to riches to rags to riches story so much. And I've seen it work so well. And it's probably one of the things that makes America the greatest is we're in almost every other country in the world, you're still paying the prices of your grandparents. Right. You're still paying you still have the consequences of your grandparents' bad decisions. But, when I looked at the stage today, I saw CJ, who seems very charming, who is several years away from being able to be as impactful as
I like CJ a lot. CJ's a good kid.
He's a good kid, and I'm sure he'll do great in college. I follow him, and he seems very charming. But I don't think a movement can. I don't think he's the vessel that a movement requires. Right. I think he's got the charm of it. So then I saw the guy, I guess it was Linwood with the Make America Great hat on, who seems persuasive, but my experience with that in politics is they have a very short shelf life. They have a very short shelf life. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I know better than most people because I'm 54. So I've seen this over the course of 30 years. I think of the people I saw on stage and the people I've seen stop the steal, I don't think there's a lot of choices into what happens next. If Loeffler wins, if Loeffler loses, if Trump retains, if he doesn't retain. So we've got to mark everybody to the market, and we've got to say, look, who can drive this car, right? And stop the steal has to become something, right? If Trump retains office, he'll be the charges against him will only go up exponentially, and if he loses office, Trumpism has to continue, and it has to have some type of a vehicle. I don't see any other vehicle that Trump that will be the host for Trumpism.
I mean, I think there are like a lot of really talented senators and politicians, and including Junior himself and the continued Trump family, that can create that vehicle. I don't think it has to be this particular group.
Trust me on this. They can't.
I'm not going to, because so I don't think you're right about that. And moreover, I think there's a character is destiny point here too, right? Like I don't have a high opinion of Ali for various reasons. I don't think, and I'm not gonna, and honestly, like I hope that his movement does well and doesn't.
We're talking about the driver of a car, and Ali is just is driving that car. We're talking about if I order an Uber, right, and there's only one car available, then and I've got to get from point A to point B, and I require that vehicle to transport me. Ali, right now, if you press that button, Ali's going to be driving up to your door, and are you going to decline that ride?
With Ali, no, absolutely. I have certain standards that I expect people I associate with to meet, and one of them is that they don't call me an opioid addict and a potential mass shooter without apologizing for it. I've yet to see that happen. I also insist that they don't associate with anti-Semites. That's another one, right? Like these are really basic ethical things that my life is much happier when I associate with people who I respect and who I trust, and Ali does not meet that category.
But you do realize now that that Loeffler, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is also unwilling to meet any type of conditions because Loeffler has been unwilling and to be an active participant in Stop the Steal for whatever reasons we don't know. Again, without getting into the palace intrigue, she's been hiding in the basement, sending out memos, and you're saying that there's some type of obligatory.
What? Oh, I didn't hear the last bit of it. What'd you say?
I just heard pounding at your door. That might be the police.
Oh, no, that's my fiance upstairs.
Good. So, the fear there is that, again, we've got to find that middle ground. So we've got to get Loeffler and Stop the Steal to connect, and we're trying to find that spot, and we've got to get you in.
Sure.
But what could get you perfectly aligned with Stop the Steal, where you become an advocate?
An advocate of them? Well, I can't work with the organization as long as Ali's running it, obviously. I'm perfectly happy to not talk about it as long as they aren't talking about, are out there and saying publicly vote for the Republican Senate candidates.
Okay.
That seems like the really, that's what I want, right? I don't want, and so none of their events that should just be a public position of the organization that people need to go vote for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. And if they're doing that, then I don't have a problem, right? I don't care about pushing for election reform and fraud cleanup. What I have a problem with is trying to demoralize people and depress turnout of the most important Senate election of our time, honestly. The most important runoff election I can think of.
But under the conditions you've met, you're asking essentially to stop the Steal movement because it is essentially Ali. And I don't know Nick Fuentes. I think I heard him once on Carter Gottfried, and he seemed articulate, but beyond that, I don't know any of it. I don't know. I haven't chronicled his life, so I really don't know what happened, in anything prior to that one interview that I saw. But so my point then is you're saying that the only condition under which you'll become an advocate of Stop the Steal is if we check off all those boxes that you require. It's no longer Stop the Steal. It's just Will Chamberlain. Is just me who's saying that don't associate with anti-Semites, don't associate that. This seems like a pretty low bar, guys, right? I don't know. And to me, it's I don't we don't all have to be, part of the thing is we don't all have to be lovey-dovey to be in the same direction, even if we're doing our own thing. Okay, right?
So I don't have to be out here before the stuff about Loeffler and Perdue came up. I wasn't publicly saying anything about what Ali was doing. Let's say Nick
Fuentes is out of it tomorrow. Let's take him out. Okay. Let's say I buy him out, right? And now what? So now we've got the anti-Semite. Is there any other anti-Semite that you know of in Stop the Steal? Do you require some type of a Mission Impossible type of dossier?
No, but this isn't you don't have to scan every single person in the movement. It's just this is a long stemming problem between, with Ali trying to bring Nick and platform Nick and bring him into everything when the dude is an unapologetic anti-Semite. I'm personally Jewish. I have a big fucking problem with it, or half Jewish rather.
My wife lost her family to the Nazis, and she lost her great-great-grandparents to pogroms in Russia. So,
I'm sure you do too. I'm not saying you don't have the same sort of repugnance towards it.
And certainly, I'm certainly not any type of proxy for Fuentes in any way. I want to make that point very, very clear.
Yeah, I totally understood. I wouldn't accuse you. I would never accuse you of that. So.
Yeah, but I think that the inter-party squabbles of the Republicans are are very, very bad, very dangerous, and ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to be steamrolled by the Democrats like you've never seen before, and you know what's going to happen? It's going to become essentially a one-party system in America. You're going to see that system that's in California, jungle primaries, which is really just meant to keep the incumbent in power and for the elites to choose which candidate they want to go. Because there's no other reason for it. It's a criminal enterprise in itself almost. So the intra-party squabbles, right, is and the ones against the smears against Ali, which somewhat do appear to be racial. I've got to tell you that, man. That big.
Oh, I mean, like there were, I'm opposed to racial smears. Heck, even I will say that like even after, like a lot of personal shit had gone down between us. I wrote an article for Human Events about. How CNN had mischaracterized what he said about Kamala Harris, right? Like they accused him and Don Jr. in fact of being racist against Kamala, and they claimed she wasn't African American. But that's just a nuanced debate about African American identity. I have no problem with defending particular points on principle, but like that's distinct from being asked to work alongside an organization that's headed by someone who I have deep personal problems with. Like I just won't do that, and that's why I'm so sympathetic to Kelly Loeffler being like, I'm not going to work with you guys as long as you keep accusing me of fraud, right? Like there's sort of a basic level of respect that needs to go both ways.
I'm just looking for where the middle is, right? Because
the middle is like the middle was here, like as long as I'll just make this point really quickly. The middle was there like a week ago when nobody was accusing the Georgia Senate candidates of fraud and saying people shouldn't vote for them or donate to them. Like that was like a week and a half ago. I don't know when that started. I don't know where that came from, but like I thought everybody was on the same page until that point. And to me, that is the breach. That is the creation of the division and the internecine squabble. And the repair, therefore, is for the people who advocated those things and people who are advocating those things, people like Lynn Wood, people like Sidney Powell, to walk those statements back and get on board with the entire Trump movement, which wants Republicans to retain control of the Senate, so that we don't lose everything.
Okay, so thank you very much, Cynthia Henning, for being here. Cynthia Henning won, and she's responding to somebody else, but I'm going to intercept, right, like that football. And she said that Chamberlain doesn't get it with a flame. She added to that, man. And she says, we the people are fed up and truckers are on fire.
Mm-hmm. I understand why you're fed up. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be fed up. I think like Republicans need to do a lot more going forward. It's really a disaster what happened this last year in terms of what they let happen with the voting rules. That said, I would say like being fed up, you need to realize like if you're like any type of conservative I know, then you don't want to see your Second Amendment right disappear. And it's not hyperbole to suggest that it would in a world where Democrats held the Senate. They've said they would pack the courts. And they've said DC versus Heller was wrongly decided. Poof. So, this isn't this is a rearguard maneuver, right? Like you are trying to preserve what power you have. It's not necessarily a maneuver to like massively increase it, but like, avoiding catastrophe is important. Avoiding risk of ruin is important. And the real catastrophe could occur for the conservative movement if the senators are not reelected.
That's a good point. And I'm going to find, and again, I want to make very, very clear, right? And I don't like when politicians say, but I'm going to do one of these type of things like a Bill Clinton with my thumb. Like, let me make it very clear. I don't even know who Nick Fuentes is. I saw him on TV once. I don't look for people's biographies, before I watch their interviews, and that's about it. So, but I'm very curious because again, these are inter-party squabbles, and the GOP, the GOP seems to be very good at casting people out, right? And so it says Fuentes is a young kid. Janet N. Lee won. Thank you very much for being here. And she's showing a rose as her profile pic. And I've got roses behind me, so thank you so much. She says Fuentes is a young kid who is an idiot, but he puts bodies on the ground.
Like the same could be said of white nationalists and Richard Spencer. We don't accept that. We wouldn't accept that. There are obviously limits to what we would tolerate. I think anti-Semitism is a pretty obvious bright line. And in the same way that open overt racism is a bright line. And that's like, I think that, calling him an idiot is kind of minimizing something that really shouldn't be minimized.
Okay, and now I'm going to find critics of you because I'm not a critic of you, man.
Yeah.
And you know that because we've spoken
of course.
offline. I understand, because one of my close friends' father is like the top lawyer, and he's, I know the guy so well, one of the top lawyers in the country. So I understand your mind, the way it works, kind of pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you kind of see things, and you're looking at this kind of as a court case now. And I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. You're saying, the first, the trial was lost, and now the appeal is one that is going to be happening in past January 20th without Trump. And it makes sense.
Right.
So Germ Wiz, thank you very much for being here. Get a profile pic. Says, called it. Will Chamberlain is an SJW. Will Chamberlain is not a social justice warrior. Will Chamberlain has a kind of a moral compass that he really adheres to very rigidly, and he's very disciplined with, and that's about it. And this is just a question of Will, how much can you compromise with that moral compass opportunity? When it's required of you.
I mean, I like to think I'm a pretty pragmatic person, but as with all things, I have limits. Right. Like, I think anybody who says they're purely pragmatic is always going to end up running into something where they have a moral objection that's enough to overcome their pragmatism. And then there's also like personal things, right? Like I guess it reflects on a personal moral compass, but people who've, insulted me very seriously and have failed to apologize for that. Like that's a deal breaker. I'm not saying that I'm going to talk about you all the time, but I'm certainly not going to work with you under those circumstances.
I will say apologies, humble apologies have done very well for me in my life. I've been one of those people that did first and apologized for doing it later. So Kimber Lake 6, and what a nice picture that is of a Native American. And I've seen a lot of pictures of Native Americans, and they always have that kind of stoicism. And I've seen some that were taken that somebody on Twitter showed me where it actually was different, and it showed them smiling and very happy. And that person, and she said, "I want to show these pictures because they never shown." So it says Will is awesome and intellectually consistent. I agree.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Kimberly. That's very nice of you to say. I try to be.
You are. And TJO Ren says, I'm very glad he started Stop the Steal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I assume that's about Ali and not me because I didn't start it. But I don't know. Yeah.
I understand, but your response to that.
I don't know that. I mean, I think Roger Stone started it in 2016 or 2018. I think I'm glad he's, I think that is a good thing. Organized people, I was perfectly happy to see him do it. And as I said, you'll notice I wasn't really saying anything about it. Because whatever my personal issues are, I'm perfectly happy to just not talk about someone if, they're out there doing good work. But the moment they started going hard after Loeffler and Purdue, I thought they were doing something very, very destructive, and that got the cost benefit analysis way out of whack. And so that's why I spoke up.
Well, let me ask you a question, because you mentioned Roger Stone. Roger Stone has a very, very checkered past.
He does have a checkered past.
And let me tell you something. I remember Roger Stone with Spitzer, and he did a lot of dirty things, man. Roger Stone did a lot of dirty things, and that's what he's been known for. And then finally his past kind of caught up with him. And I think their treatment of him was bad, but he did have 4 decades of knives waiting in the closets to find his body. And they did, right? It took 40 years, but people were setting a lot of scores with him. So the GOP and even you haven't cast him out, right? I mean, Trump was dealing with Roger Stone, but you supported Trump.
I mean, I thought I supported the pardon of Roger Stone. I thought I don't think that prosecution should have been brought.
But even said, 4 years ago when Roger Stone was, kind of within in the Trump car, right?
I met Roger Stone. I like Roger Stone. But just personally,
we're not talking about liking, right? I mean, we're talking about your morals and being consistent and adhering to them. Because I genuinely think Roger Stone is a bad guy. I'm sure he's a sweet guy. I'm sure he's done some great things, and I'm not Seneca, and I'm not gonna so I'm not gonna put a scorecard on his life or a pro and con, and I don't need to have a friendship with him. But from what we know about Roger Stone, and I think even admitted from Roger Stone, he's a bad guy.
I mean, I honestly, this is where I have to pull the move that you pulled with Nick. Like, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know about.
We do know. Everybody knows who Nick Fuentes is.
I mean, but like I know that Roger was a political operative and a dirty trickster.
But no, that's not fair, because look, Nick Fuentes is a celebrity right now, kind of a Twitter celebrity, and there's an impermanence to Twitter celebrity.
Sure.
Roger Stone has endured almost a 50-year career now, right? Everybody knows of Roger Stone's exploits, and you may not know of all of them. I mean, you may not have what do they call his proffer or whatever he did with his, whatever in post sentencing type of thing, where they evaluate when they write up your whole life, and he says, "I'm a good boy." You may not have that in front of you, but you know enough of Roger Stone exploits to know that he's a bad guy, and his association with Trump should have been disqualifying to Trump, shouldn't it?
I mean, honestly, like I can't say that I do. I don't. We'd have to go down what he did. Like, there's definitely stuff where I'm like, somebody who I think is definitely a bad guy is Manafort. Like, for sure, that dude's just a fraud. Like a ridiculous tax.
Listen, I know people who know Manafort really well, right? And one of them is in my building. And I know people who know Roger Stone really well. And these are bad guys. These guys don't have a friend in the world. They might have people that are around them. These guys do not have friends. They have business association. I'm not assuming your relationship with him is a friendship one, because
I wouldn't call it that either. Like, I met him once. Right?
We don't talk. I never thought you had that proximity to him, right? But at the same time, you have as much proximity with him, that one meeting, as you might have had with Nick Fuentes. But with Nick Fuentes, you found him so objectionable that he is a disqualifier for you from Stop the Steal. But with Roger Stone, who I could go on Twitter, we could go down his list, man. It's skeezy, right? He's a skeezy guy. I'm not saying he's a bad human being.
I mean, is he racist? Like, I don't know. Like, is he?
I'm not his judge.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our higher authorities, and I'm certainly not that person. But we can make some equivalence, unless you refuse to make any type of equivalence and do any type of recognition of Roger Stone's character. I
mean, I don't have any, like, a strong viewpoint on Roger Stone. Let's just put it that way. Like, I don't. It's maybe this is where I think I just don't know as much about him.
If you knew that Roger Stone was involved with drugs, if you knew that he was if you found out that he was an anti-Semite, would you have voted for Trump in 2016?
I don't know. Because then it's like lesser of two evils. I don't know the right answer to that. I don't know. Like, it would be like if Roger Stone was an overt anti-Semite, that would be a problem. I don't know. I'd like it.
About a problem. I don't care about problems.
I know you're trying to put me into a decision. I don't know what I would do. I'd have to think about it. Right. Like, it's like, because it's the election, it's the control of the federal government. Like, it's a little bit of a bigger stake.
Okay. I just wanted to get a sense. And that's all fair. I want to get to Andrew Meyer, because I know he's been a critic of you, and I'm not a blocker. So
yeah, he's been mad. I mean, I think I blocked him today, because I have a rule that nobody has a right to be an asshole in my mentions. Right? It's a privilege. You are granted the privilege of being an asshole in my mentions, but no one has the right to be an asshole in my mentions.
May I
exceeded that?
Yeah. May I include him in this, or if you ask me not to, then I won't.
I would prefer not. I don't. Okay. He's been very irritating to me today, and I don't feel like having he's again, that's not something I feel like doing.
Okay, and so and again, because I know you have a lot of critics, and I want to be responsive to him. And let me tell you something. When Ali was on, Ali had a lot of critics, a lot of critics, and I disagree, because I don't like the word grifter. And I read that article, and they're like, he made $2,000. Nancy and I laughed at that. They're like, he made $2,000. Are you kidding?
Right.
That's nothing. The guy did petty crime. That's nothing. And I didn't like that picture of him. I didn't like what it said with his the name that he used to use, because we all know what that implies. And now saying Ali Alexander is always trying to be participate in something, trying to be deceptive, right? I didn't like that. I don't like those smears, man. And people got to stop that shit, because I don't like it. So Nicolette T. Kiko. Nicolette A. Kiko. My apologies, but I'm going to say Nicolette A. Kiko. So Ali's a bigger person than you, referring to Will. He's offered to work with you so many times.
I mean, has he, like, it seems like that's the basic problem here, is he accused me of being, again, a opioid addict and a potential mass shooter. He's he continues to bring anti-Semites and try and bring them into anything he's involved in, which he's been doing with Stop the Steal. I don't know why Nick Quinn is involved, but he is. And again, I don't want to again, it's tricky because I don't want to breach confidences and I don't want to hurt people unnecessarily, but I've had personal firsthand experience of watching Ali try and exploit one of these sort of popular movements for his own personal financial benefit, or what appeared to me to be his personal financial benefit.
No, everybody does. Let me tell you, I heard I heard a Periscope from Cernovich, who's got the best Periscopes. That guy is fire. You got to watch this. They're cinematic. He's got it down to a science in terms of being. I think he said about hoax that he wanted to make it more exciting, or I think he said he wanted hoax to be as exciting as Twitter. And his Periscopes are like these 10-minute movies, man. They're as exciting as Twitter. And I remember him saying, look, the GOP has done nothing for me. Even today he said it. GOP's done nothing for me. Everybody's grifted with millions and millions of dollars. Senators have grifted. PACs have grifted. They pretended to be Trump supporters. Ali even said that Ali said in the last Periscope that Trump's own people are not reporting to work. They're kind of like missing in action. Clearly does seem to be the case, right? And you've had people that have grifted off of Trump for 4 years. I mean, you've got Karl Rove that's made a career out of grifting.
I mean, I don't work with Karl Rove either. I don't know what to say. I had a personal experience with a guy that left a really, really bad taste in my mouth and made me not want to work with him. And then that's compounded by these other problems as well.
Okay, so
I forgot about the other thing. Where he decided to launch, participate in a giant harassment campaign against Ashley St. Clair. I completely forgot about that. That was absolutely appalling. There's a lot of we can go down the examples where, and this is one of those things where it's people often have this thing where they're they see two public figures who are generally aligned. They're why won't they work together? It's you guys don't see what happens behind the scenes that creates these personal issues. And if you were there, you'd understand. Or maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd still be frustrated that I, have my standards. But that's the way it is. I have a very serious problem with the way he's treated me personally in the past, the way he's treated friends of mine, the way he's, so I don't want to work with him. That's damn well my right.
Yeah. And I want to be cautious because you've been emphatic with that. And I just want you to have that awareness that you don't need to be. I mean, I like you. You're such a good person, Al. And I hope great things for Ali. And hopefully you guys can mend fences, because I think sometimes forceful personalities and people who are striving and really ambitious sometimes can lose awareness of themselves in that moment, right? They don't necessarily realize the consequences. If they do something today, it has consequences tomorrow. It's kind of easy to lose that, particularly when you're young. And so Jess Matchi, and I recognize the picture, so thank you very much. Jess Matchi says, basic ethical thing, support Stop the Steal to get the Trump vote for Kelly.
I mean, I think, the question is, do we support fighting election fraud? Do we support all those things? Sure. But does Kelly have to support the rally up there? I don't think she does. And I think it's really, I put the ethical onus not on Kelly to support them, but on them to walk back the things they said about Kelly, right? that seems really basic to me. Everything was fine. Nobody was disagreeing with each other until a week and a half ago, when all of a sudden, Stop the Steal is Kelly's not doing enough and supporting us enough or overtly enough. And so we're going to start telling people to not vote for her. That was the breach, and the breach needs to be repaired by the people who made the breach.
Okay. And I think that's reasonable. And I want to just get back to one point about the grifting part, because I think it was really important. A lot of people have been grifting off of Trump. And for somebody to grift and make $5,000 or $20,000, you know that ain't nothing. I mean, you've got people that are pretending that they're like this Trump substituent for 2024.
No, I mean it's not really about the money. It's just about the way you handled it. Like I you know, like you can have a dealing with someone where you can do a small deal, but the way they conduct themselves during that deal will give you a very sour taste in your mouth. I'm sure you've done deals like that in the past. Like the way Ali conducted himself during this deal that I was privy to gave me a very sour taste.
I wasn't asking for further prosecution of Ali. I was just saying that there are plenty of people. In fact, there's a whole world. In fact, Ronna McDonald Daniel, or whatever her name is, Ronnie Romnell McDonald, whatever it is, has spent the last 4 years grifting off of every single Trump. I think is the biggest small dollar. He had the most number of small dollar contributors in American history, and look at where all those dollars went. It didn't go into his legal team, his staffing team, his field operation. It just did nothing. So you've got a GOP that's a grift. It's a grift operation right now. I'm telling you, it's a grift. I
won't go that far. I know there are grifts occurring within the GOP, but I'm not going to go that far as to call the operation a grift.
Josh Hawley is a grifter. Watch.
I don't think so. I like Josh Hawley. I think he's sincere because like I come from the same place. Like it's not like Josh Hawley and I don't have similar backgrounds, right? I come from a well-off background and like, you know, he's not that much older than me, maybe 6 years older than me, something like that, 5 years older than me. He's only like 40, right? And it's like I could, you know, with Hawley, somebody like Hawley, it's like he sees the world the way I see it.
Okay, so I'll take that back because he hasn't. And again, I went against you for saying these type of future things, right? And so I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that either. And make these.
It's hard. I mean, I think you got to be able to be willing to make predictions. Like that's the thing. I think the weakness there is not saying, well, if I can't accuse Hawley of this, I can't hold it up for. I think the general weakness is saying you can't project the future about what politicians will do.
There's a lot of PACs. There's that Lincoln Project. There's so many PACs that are just grifters. I mean, just grifters, and you know, it's a bad thing. So I don't really mind somebody doing a small dollar grift is what it is. It doesn't really bother me because it's such small dollar type of stuff. I suppose, and I don't know, and I'm certainly not defending Ali or going against Ali. I'm just making my own observation of people as I'm 54 years old. And I've had so many business associates and so many business relationships that I definitely understand people's hesitancy to get burned twice. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I also understand that apologies are one of the most meaningful things. Humble apologies are one of the most meaningful things a person can do because I've had to do it many times, and it's been very relieving and cathartic for me and perhaps for the other person as well. But you know, I hope the best for everybody, right? So I clicked it off. Okay, so good point. King Gitz, one, thank you so much for being here. Says Ali isn't lazy when many are. Ali is certainly taking a lot of online energy, fragmented online energy, and mobilizing it into a real physical.
Yeah, to his credit, that's all very well and good. And as I've said before, that's why I wasn't saying anything like negative about Stop the Steal until they started being antagonistic towards Loeffler and Purdue. Like that was other than like until then it was like good, go do good work. I don't get upset when people I don't like do good work. If people I don't like do good work, then I'm a team player. I'll be quiet, even if I don't like them personally, or I'll even sometimes compliment them on their good work. But you know that's not the problem. The problem I laid out was pretty specific.
See, my point in the beginning was that the only way that Trump has an opportunity to stay in office is because we know that the courts are going to respond to public outcry, right? That's just the way courts kind of.
I mean, like the problem is there's, you know, in any election, I mean, public outcry, especially when you're talking about being on the side that as of the, you know, court cases has the lower number of votes. I mean, I just don't think it works in this instance. It's not like civil rights, you know, like it's a different dynamic.
So Kim Gibbs, I just wanted to get back to that because she does make a good point. And my question to you then is Ali has been mobilizing these people. So there is no cohesive and coherent establishment GOP adversary.
I mean, I don't Adversary to Ali or adversary to the
adversary to the establishment GOP. In other words, when you say that if Kelly Loeffler is a disappointment, then we'll primary her without a vehicle, right? It's not just a matter of getting her a candidate. It's also a matter of driving votes to vote for that candidate. And they're not going to vote just because they're displeased. They're not going to withhold their vote for Kelly Loeffler just because they're displeased with something she voted for 4 years ago. It takes mobilization.
I mean, it does mobilization. I'm for mobilization. Like, I'm not sure like where we disagree. Like, good, mobilize. Like, there's a big difference between saying like, I don't think they're, I'm like opposed to everything Stop the Steal is doing with like, I personally am not going to work with the organizers because I have a personal problem with them. Like those are different. I feel like those are different things. I don't have a problem with on the ground organizing. And if it turns out Stop the Steal, remains in its current form and ends up being the opposition to people like Romney and whoever else is like betraying the nationalist, MAGA base, like, fine. I don't have like, that's, we'll deal with that when it happens.
So I'm going to respond to this because, we got to respond to critics, right? Just like I expect Loeffler to stand in that arena today with her 5,000 or 10,000 electorate and be responsive to them against all accusations. I do the same. I take pride in responding to things. And also because I think that this person is wrong. So Heisenberg says, Will being the good little cook that he is, GOP 101. I don't think Will is being that at all. Will is not. Will was the one who took that video. Will was actually on the ground in Philadelphia taking that video, which is where everything started off from. Without that video, none of this would have been. That was kind of like the spark. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was the ignition. That was it. That was liftoff right there. And then from there, everything built on top of that. So I disagree. I think Will, like he said, is looking at things pragmatically. And is kind of reducing as much as he can that emotional element to it. And, he's looking at this as a court case, and I can't really disagree with him because that's how he's looking at it, as a court case. And he wants to win the court case. And sometimes that requires a plea agreement or, whatever it is. I mean,
it's like I look at it like a strategic. I mean, I analogize this to the Battle of Midway repeatedly, where I was like, we lost 3 carriers, but do we really want to lose the 4th? Like in a sort of futile attempt at a last ditch surface attack, or do we get that carrier out of harm's way? Like that's the circumstance the Japanese were in after about noon on the day of the Battle of Midway, when they got caught by surprise and lost 3 of their carriers out of 4. Like sometimes you got to realize like what you've got to realize that if you need to make sure that you consolidate and protect like your most important resources and your most important power bases, even if it means like you end up losing a battle, like that's how I think about these things, right? The way I look at it is like the election happened. There was almost certainly a lot of fraud. Whether it's very unlikely we are going to be effectively able to prove it in a court of law in the next 6 weeks, which means Biden's going to be president, and we need to be ready to deal with that. And not like I feel like it would be incredibly disillusioning to simply say like, Trump's going to win. Trump's going to be in office in 2 months, no matter what. I promise, 100%. Like I'd be bullshitting you. That would be massive bullshit. And like I think Lynn Wood said something like that. Like Trump will be in office in 2 months. I think that's massive bullshit.
We're going to go on with. I'm going to basically respond to this. Pump House Pump House PBC says legal system railroad is going due to the left's outcry on the rig system. Listen, that guy spent 40 years building up enemies. They chickens come home to roost, man. I'm not I'm not his judge, but I've been in this business of politics for a long time, and he got railroaded in this instance, but sometimes I can tell you right now with politics from my experience and with all these things that go on that enemies, people in politics, they funders and everybody else, they have knives and they just wait, man. I come from Wall Street. I come from analysis side. I waited for years to short Twitter stock. I mean, that because of I had one meeting with Jack 10, 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And I waited for about 7 years to short the stock just to screw up. But I waited 7 years for that perfect moment. They waited for Stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will, anything to say to that?
No, not really. I mean, I think I think, honestly, I don't think that prosecution should have happened, but as a matter of law, like, I think that he actually did perjure himself, which is a problem. I just think, like, he made a false statement to Congress. As long as James Clapper wasn't going to be prosecuted for lying to Congress, then Roger Stone shouldn't have been either. Because to me, like,
did you ever see that Twilight Zone episode where that guy lies and then the UFOs come down and they think he's telling the truth and they think? Do you remember? Did you ever see that?
I did not see that one. No.
You got to look that up, man. That's Roger Stone. It's like this pathological liar in the South is just sitting in bars and telling everybody all these absurd kind of Monty Python-esque almost type of lies. And then these aliens are overhearing this. These UFOs are overhearing them. And then they come to Earth and they like take me to your leader and they think he's the leader. So that's Roger Stone, man. He was trying to sell a book and shit happened. So JD123JD says, stories of Chicago voting machines giving 3-1 votes to Dems for decades. Innocence is over.
I mean, like, there's a difference between what you know and what you can prove. My point is about what we can prove within the next 6 weeks. And as I've said, I think we've been over this. Anyway, I'm getting exhausted, dude. We're going to do this. This is going to be short, and it's gone 2 hours.
I thought it was going to be an hour, but I saw so many questions here. Yeah, and I wanted to respond to your critics because I did the same thing with Ali, right? Yeah. And with Ali, I was even a bit more emphatic, I think, because I wanted to respond to critics because I see the inter-party squabbles. And I just want everything to come along. So if somebody would be kind enough here, because we're going to close on it, I'm not going to be able to type it right now, and type out, what is it, www.humanevents. Is it humanevents.com?
Humanevents.com is the website. Should have an announcement tomorrow that I'm pretty excited about. But really me on Twitter, on Periscope, Will Chamberlain on Twitter and Periscope. That's where I do most of my advocacy. So that's what's up.
I think I'm doing it right now. Hold on. It should add banner. And now I go like this. You see how I did that?
Yeah.
That's it. Right? That's
Boom.
awesome.
Boom. Look at that.
It's amazing, this thing. So we've covered a lot of territory. I can't believe it. And thank you. We thought it was going to be 40 minutes. I was like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. And here we are. But you have a lot of comments. We have a lot of critics. Ali had a lot of critics. And we just got to find a middle ground because, we always want to win. I think it's important to all of us. And now we're just trying to define our terms. And that's what we're trying to get to some agreement on what winning is.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. And happy to take all the criticism from you guys. It's an opportunity at least to explain, for people who are upset. Like, I don't get mad that people are critical. Although if you're in my mentions and being an asshole, then you may get blocked. Just saying. I'm
not critical of
I'm a little more aggressive in general, but yeah.
I'm not a critic of you at all. I think you're awesome.
Yeah, I know that, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you're awesome. And I think we're going to close up here. So I want to thank everybody so much for their time and for joining us. And I know this went a lot longer than Will and I expected, and perhaps that you guys expected also. But I'm glad we had a chance to get to a lot of people's questions, comments, criticisms, and compliments. Right?
Yeah,
today is Nancy's birthday, and let's all remember that Jack Posobiec has, I believe. Last I was expecting, but I think it might. I think might have happened, and now has a new child on December 2nd also. So congratulations! His family is building up. So I want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to that as well, and to congratulate Jack and the wonderful Tanya. And we're gonna close up with that. Is that all right? All right?
That's just fine.
We cover a lot of territory. So I'm going to press end broadcast, right? You don't see that button, but it's on my upper right-hand screen.
Yeah, I use StreamYard now based on your recommendations. So yeah, I know what it's like.
It's awesome. So I'm going to press that button, and then we're all going to say goodbye. And Will, can you stay on with me for a second after that?
Sure.
Would that be all right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm going to go like this. Now I'm going to go like this. And